One choice. One moment. One love story. Welcome to When He Chose Her. Enjoy the story. The fastest way to lose someone's respect is to confuse power with permission. Declan Whitmore had built a $12 billion empire by making decisions faster than everyone else in the room. At 39, he owned companies across 3 continents, employed thousands of people, and had a calendar so tightly scheduled that even his private assistant needed approval to add a 10-minute phone call. People listened when he spoke. People moved when he asked. People rarely told him no, which was why the silence on the other end of the line felt so strange. Declan stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, looking down at the glittering skyline nearly 60 stories below. The city stretched endlessly beneath the evening sky, filled with lights, traffic, ambition, and opportunity. In his hand was a phone. On the screen was a name he had thought about far more often than he wanted to admit. Savannah Hayes, the waitress, the woman who somehow managed to make him feel less important every time they spoke. He frowned slightly before speaking. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. There's a charity gala at the Grand Crescent Hotel. I need a guest. We're something formal. Across town, nearly 14 miles away, Savannah balanced a tray loaded with coffee mugs while navigating through the busy dining room of Riverside Cafe. The Friday dinner rush was in full swing. Plates clinked. Conversations blended together. The smell of fresh bread and roasted chicken filled the air. She tucked the phone between her shoulder and ear while continuing toward a table near the window. That sounds less like an invitation and more like a corporate memo, she replied calmly. Declan barely noticed the warning in her voice. The event starts at 7. My driver will pick you up at 6. Savannah stopped walking. A small smile appeared on her face. Not an amused smile. The kind that appears when someone has just confirmed exactly what you suspected about them. Your driver? She asked. Yes. And what if I already have plans? Declan adjusted his cufflink. Cancel them. A customer. Nearby accidentally knocked over a spoon. The metallic sound echoed briefly through the cafe. Savannah stared at the floor for a moment. Then she looked out the window toward the river beyond the streetlights. Wow, she said softly. What? Declan asked. You really don't hear yourself, do you? He frowned. Excuse me. For the first time, Savannah's voice lost its warmth. You didn't ask if I wanted to go. Declan opened his mouth to answer. You didn't even invite me. She shifted the tray to her other hand. You assigned me. The words landed harder than she intended. For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed outside both of their worlds. Then Declan sighed. Savannah, you're overthinking this. She laughed quietly. A short laugh. Not happy. Not angry. Just disappointed. Good night, Declan. Wait. Click. The line went dead. Declan stared at his phone. For a full 3 seconds, he didn't move. The screen reflected his own confused expression. Then he pulled the phone away and checked it. Call ended. He blinked. She had hung up on him. Not lost signal. Not disconnected accidentally. Hung up. His assistant had once cried during a board meeting because he interrupted her presentation. A senator had waited 40 minutes to speak with him. An executive team had spent an entire weekend rewriting a proposal because he disliked a single paragraph. Yet Savannah Hayes had ended the conversation without hesitation, as if his status meant absolutely nothing. A strange feeling settled in his chest. It wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was something much more unfamiliar. Humility mixed with curiosity. Meanwhile, back at Riverside Cafe, Savannah slipped the phone into her apron pocket and delivered coffee to table 12. Everything okay? Asked her coworker Madison, noticing the expression on her face. Savannah nodded. Just received another reminder that being rich doesn't automatically make someone charming. Madison laughed. Was that the billionaire again? Savannah picked up an empty plate. Unfortunately. And Savannah smiled. I hung up on him. Madison nearly dropped a stack of menus. You did what? A nearby customer overheard and turned around. You hung up. On a billionaire. Savannah shrugged. Last time I checked, phones cost the same amount to disconnect regardless of net worth. The customer burst out laughing. Madison stared at her in disbelief. Savannah, normal people don't hang up on billionaires. Savannah grabbed another tray and headed toward the kitchen. Maybe that's why billionaires need someone to do it once in a while. Far across the city, Declan remained standing beside the window. The skyline looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes earlier. Yet somehow the world felt different. Because for the first time in years, someone had treated him like an ordinary man, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning began like any other at Riverside Cafe. The coffee machines hissed. Plates clinked. The river shimmered beneath a pale spring sun. Savannah Hayes arrived 15 minutes before her shift, carrying a paper cup of black coffee and a notebook filled with sketches for the community reading center she volunteered at on weekends. She was halfway through unlocking the front entrance when she noticed something unusual. 3 black sport utility vehicles rolled slowly down the street and stopped directly in front of the cafe. Their polished exteriors reflected the morning sunlight like mirrors. A man walking his dog paused. 2 cyclists slowed down. Even the mail carrier stopped sorting envelopes. Savannah stared for a second. Then another. "You have got to be kidding me," she whispered. The first vehicle door opened. 2 security guards stepped out wearing dark suits and earpieces. They were not intimidating. They simply looked extremely official, which somehow made the situation even stranger. Customers arriving for breakfast immediately began staring. One elderly man entering the cafe glanced at the guards and quietly turned around before deciding he probably still wanted pancakes. Inside, the staff gathered near the front windows. Madison nearly dropped a tray of glasses. "Savannah," she said slowly, "tell me those people are not here for you." Savannah rubbed her forehead. "I really hope they are not." Then the rear door of the second vehicle opened. Declan Whitmore stepped onto the sidewalk. He wore a navy overcoat, a white dress shirt, and the expression of a man who had spent the entire night arguing with his own thoughts. The street seemed to pause. Several people recognized him immediately. His face appeared regularly on financial magazines, business channels, and billboards across Manhattan. Declan looked toward the cafe entrance and spotted Savannah standing there. For a brief second, neither moved. Then he started walking. Savannah folded her arms. "No," Madison whispered. "He actually came. Apparently. With security? Apparently." Declan stopped a few feet away. The guards remained near the vehicles, smart enough not to follow. Savannah appreciated that much. "Good morning," Declan said. It was until about 30 seconds ago. A smile almost escaped his face. "Almost. Can we talk?" Most people use phones for that. You hung up on mine. A customer entering the cafe overheard the comment and immediately slowed down. Savannah noticed. So did Declan. Neither acknowledged it. "I was busy," Savannah replied. "You were dismissing me." "There is a difference." Declan exhaled. He had negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions. He had faced hostile investors. Yet somehow speaking to one waitress felt significantly more difficult. "I came because I wanted an answer." Savannah raised an eyebrow. "You drove 14 miles with an escort for an answer?" "I needed clarification." "That sounds more expensive." Behind them, one of the security guards tried very hard not to laugh. Declan noticed and shot him a look. The guard immediately examined a nearby parking meter with great professional interest. Savannah almost smiled. "Almost. What exactly are you trying to clarify?" she asked. Declan hesitated. The answer sounded ridiculous even inside his own head. "Why did you hang up?" Savannah blinked. "That is why you are here." "Yes." She stared at him. Then she looked at the vehicles. Then at the guards. Then back at him. For a moment she said nothing. Finally she shook her head. "Declan, do you realize how insane this looks?" "Probably. People are going to think you are here to buy the building." "I am not." "Good. Because the muffins are not included." This time Declan actually laughed. A genuine laugh. Unexpected and brief. It caught both of them off guard. Savannah noticed the tension leave his shoulders for the first time. Beneath the expensive clothes and corporate reputation stood a man who genuinely seemed confused. Not angry. Not offended. Confused. "You really do not understand, do you?" she asked softly. Declan met her eyes. "Then explain it to me." For the first time since arriving, Savannah saw that he was not trying to win an argument. He was trying to understand one. And that made all the difference. Savannah glanced through the cafe window where half the neighborhood now seemed determined to pretend they were not watching. A woman walking past slowed down so dramatically that she nearly stopped moving altogether. 2 college students sat at an outdoor table without ordering anything, clearly hoping the situation would become more interesting. The river breeze carried the scent of fresh coffee and spring air through the open doorway. Declan stood quietly, waiting. That alone surprised her. Most powerful men interrupted. Most powerful men defended themselves before hearing criticism. Declan was simply listening. Savannah placed her hands into the pockets of her apron. "You want to know why I hung up?" she asked. "Yes. Because you were treating me like an employee." Declan frowned. "You are not my employee." "Exactly." The answer landed immediately. She could see it in his face. Not understanding yet, but thinking. Really thinking. "When you called," Savannah continued, "you did not ask if I wanted to go. You decided I was going. I assumed you would enjoy it. That is not the point." A delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere inside the cafe, a blender started running. The ordinary sounds of a normal morning surrounded them. Savannah wondered if Declan had experienced many mornings that felt normal. Probably not. "Do you know what happens around here every day?" she asked. "People come in. Some are teachers. Some are construction workers. Some drive delivery vans. Some are retired. They all ask before sitting at a table someone else is using. They ask before borrowing a chair. They ask before taking the last muffin." Declan nodded slowly. And somehow the richest man I have ever met forgot to ask before planning my evening." Behind them, one of the security guards quietly looked away to hide another smile. Declan noticed, but ignored it this time. He was too busy replaying the conversation from the night before. Every word sounded different now. Not because Savannah had changed the facts. Because she had changed the perspective. "I thought I was being generous," he admitted. "I know. The gala was important. I am sure it was. I wanted you there." Savannah softened slightly. "That part was actually nice." Declan looked confused. "Then why did everything go wrong?" "Because nice intentions do not magically fix bad delivery." For the first time, Declan laughed at himself. A short, reluctant laugh. "You make it sound like I was shipping a package. Honestly, I have received friendlier shipping notifications." Even he could not argue with that. The conversation felt strangely easy now. Not comfortable exactly, but honest. And honesty was rare in his world. Most people filtered themselves around him. Most people measured every sentence. Savannah seemed completely uninterested in doing either. "Can I ask you something?" Declan said. "Sure. Why are you not intimidated?" Savannah blinked. "By what?" "Me." She looked genuinely puzzled. "Declan, you are wearing an expensive coat. You are not a dragon." One of the college students outside nearly choked on his coffee. Declan shook his head. "That is not what I mean." "I know." Savannah smiled. "Look, your companies are impressive. Your success is impressive. But none of that tells me whether you are kind, or honest, or worth trusting." Those words settled into the silence between them. The river sparkled beyond the street. A gull drifted across the blue sky overhead. For a moment, the billionaire and the waitress simply stood there. "Most people care about what I have accomplished," Declan said quietly. "That is because accomplishments are easy to measure. And trust takes longer." A customer pushed open the cafe door. "Savannah," Madison called from inside. "We need help with table 6. Savannah glanced over her shoulder. The breakfast crowd was growing. Real life was waiting. "I should get back to work." Declan nodded. "Of course." She took a step toward the entrance, then paused. "For what it is worth," she said, "coming all the way here to ask instead of getting angry was a good start." Something unexpected appeared in Declan's expression. Relief. Small. Genuine. Human. Savannah disappeared inside the cafe. The door closed behind her. Declan remained standing on the sidewalk for another moment, watching through the glass as she returned to work. Customers smiled at her. Children waved at her. The entire room seemed brighter when she walked through it. For the first time in years, Declan Whitmore realized there was a difference between being respected because of power and being appreciated because of character. And he was no longer sure which one mattered more. 3 days later, Declan Whitmore stood in front of his closet feeling something he had not experienced before: an acquisition, a shareholder meeting, or an international negotiation. Uncertainty. He stared at 2 nearly identical navy jackets, and somehow neither seemed right. Across Manhattan, Savannah Hayes was finishing her shift when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and immediately laughed. The message contained only 6 words. "May I invite you properly?" She read it twice, then a third time. Not because it was complicated, because it was different. A second message appeared. No assumptions. No driver. No schedule. Just dinner. Savannah smiled despite herself. Progress, she thought. Actual progress. Later that evening, she agreed. The restaurant Declan selected overlooked the Hudson River. Elegant, but not extravagant. The kind of place where conversations mattered more than appearances. At least that had been his intention. Unfortunately, intentions and reality rarely traveled together. Savannah arrived at 7 o'clock sharp and immediately knew something had gone wrong. A hostess greeted her by name before she even introduced herself. A manager appeared from nowhere. Two waiters nearly collided trying to pull out the same chair. In the corner, a string quartet quietly played music that seemed suspiciously timed. Savannah stopped beside the table. Declan stood. "Good evening." "Declan." She glanced around the room. "Is this dinner or a diplomatic summit?" He looked confused. "What?" "Everyone here seems terrified." As if to prove her point, a waiter accidentally dropped a spoon and apologized 3 separate times. Declan rubbed the back of his neck. "I may have mentioned I was coming." "How many times?" "A few." Savannah sat down. "Define a few." "My assistant called twice." Of course she did. The evening continued. At first it seemed promising. The sunset painted the river gold. Boats drifted across the water. The city lights slowly awakened along the shoreline. Then the problems began. Declan's phone rang. He answered. A board member needed a decision. 5 minutes later, another executive called. Then another. Savannah quietly sipped sparkling water while watching him manage a billion-dollar empire from the dinner table. 40 minutes passed. Then 50. At one point, Declan opened a laptop. A laptop. At dinner. Savannah stared at it in disbelief. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Reviewing tomorrow's merger documents." "At our dinner?" "Just for a minute." That is exactly what people say before wasting an hour. Declan looked up. "This is important." Savannah nodded. "I know. Then you understand." "Actually, I do not." He blinked. "You do not?" "No." She folded her napkin and placed it beside her plate. "Because when I agreed to dinner, I thought you wanted to spend time with me." Declan immediately closed the laptop. "I do." "Then why does it feel like I am competing with 300 employees and a spreadsheet?" The question hit harder than any criticism she had given him before. Because it was true. He looked around the table. 2 phones. 1 laptop. 3 unopened emails flashing across the screen. Suddenly the setup looked ridiculous. Savannah reached into her purse and pulled out a small folded note. She placed it beside his water glass. "What is this?" he asked. "Homework." Declan unfolded the paper. Written neatly across the page were 8 words. "This is a date. Not a shareholder meeting." He could not help smiling. Savannah stood. "Leaving already?" "Yes." "Why?" She laughed softly. "Because I like you slightly more than I liked you last week." Declan looked surprised. "That sounds positive." "It is." She picked up her coat. "Which is exactly why I am not staying while you turn dinner into quarterly earnings." For a moment, neither moved. Then something unexpected happened. Declan laughed. A real laugh. Not because the situation was funny. Because she was right. Again. Savannah started walking toward the exit. Halfway there, she turned back. "Try being a normal person for one day." One day. No assistants. No executives. No security. No luxury shortcuts. That sounds impossible. Savannah smiled. "Then maybe that is your next lesson." The door closed behind her. Declan remained at the table staring at the note in his hand. Around him, the city sparkled beyond the glass. For the first time in years, a failed evening did not feel like a loss. It felt like an opportunity. The question was whether he was brave enough to accept it. The following Saturday began with what Declan Whitmore would later describe as the longest day of his adult life. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, he stood outside a subway station wearing jeans, sneakers, and a plain gray jacket. No driver. No assistant. No security team. No luxury sedan waiting nearby. Just a billionaire holding a transit card he had no idea how to use. The challenge had seemed simple when Savannah suggested it. Live like a normal person for one day. By 8:15, he was already regretting his confidence. The first problem arrived at the ticket machine. After several failed attempts, a teenager barely old enough to drive walked over and showed him which button to press. Declan thanked him. The teenager nodded and said, "No problem, man." Man. Not Mr. Whitmore. Not sir. Just man. The experience felt oddly refreshing. 20 minutes later, he boarded the wrong train and ended up nearly 6 miles away from where he intended to go. He stared at the station map with the concentration of someone trying to decode ancient hieroglyphics. Meanwhile, Savannah was finishing volunteer work at the community reading center when her phone buzzed. A text message appeared. Question: Is getting lost part of the assignment? She laughed immediately. Depends. How lost? A photo arrived showing a train station she recognized instantly. Declan was nowhere near his destination. Very lost, he added. Savannah shook her head and replied with directions. An hour later, things became worse. Declan stopped at a neighborhood grocery store to buy lunch. Accustomed to people handling every detail of his schedule, he had never considered how many decisions existed inside an ordinary shopping trip. Bread, cheese, soup, fruit. There were apparently 78 different kinds of yogurt. He stood frozen in front of a refrigerator section for almost 5 minutes. An elderly woman beside him finally asked, "Honey, are you choosing yogurt or buying the building?" Declan laughed despite himself. Still deciding. Pick one before retirement. By noon, he had successfully purchased groceries and accidentally left his wallet on the checkout counter. He did not notice until 3 blocks later. Panic arrived instantly. Then embarrassment. Then more panic. Fortunately, a store employee chased him down the sidewalk carrying the wallet. "Sir," the employee called. "You forgot this." Declan accepted it gratefully. "Thank you. Happens all the time." The employee smiled. "You should probably pay attention to where you are." The advice sounded simple, yet somehow it stayed with him. Pay attention to where you are. Not where you need to be tomorrow. Not next quarter. Not next year. Here. Now. Later that afternoon, Savannah agreed to meet him at a small public park overlooking the river. When she arrived, she immediately noticed something different. Declan looked tired. Not exhausted from work. Human tired. Windblown hair. Wrinkled jacket. A coffee stain on one sleeve. "Rough day?" she asked. "I got defeated by public transportation." Savannah laughed. "That bad? I am fairly certain the subway system hates me personally." They sat on a bench facing the water. Children played nearby. A dog chased a tennis ball across the grass. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. So, Savannah asked, "What did you learn?" Declan thought about it. The teenager at the station. The woman in the grocery store. The employee who returned his wallet. People who had helped him without wanting anything in return. "Most people are kinder than I expected," he said quietly. Savannah looked at him with surprise. It was not the answer she expected. "Anything else?" He nodded. "I spend so much time managing everything that I forgot what ordinary life feels like." The breeze carried the scent of river water and spring flowers through the park. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Savannah smiled softly. "That might be the smartest thing you have said since I met you." Declan smiled back. And for the first time, neither of them seemed interested in ending the conversation. Some people reveal who they are when they gain power. Others reveal who they are when nobody is watching. A week after their afternoon in the park, Declan found himself thinking about Savannah more often than he intended. Not because she challenged him. Plenty of people challenged him. Not because she was different. Although she certainly was. What stayed in his mind was a simple question. What did Savannah Hayes do when nobody was looking? The answer arrived by accident on a quiet Saturday morning. Declan had planned to spend the weekend reviewing reports at his office. Instead, while walking through a neighborhood several miles from Riverside Cafe, he noticed a familiar figure carrying 3 cardboard boxes toward an old brick building. Savannah. Curious, he slowed his pace. The sign above the entrance read Riverside Community Reading Center. Children's books decorated the front windows. Bright paper stars hung from the ceiling inside. Through the glass, he watched Savannah set down the boxes and immediately get surrounded by children. A little girl handed her a drawing. A boy proudly showed her a chapter book. Another child tugged on her sleeve, excited about something only 7-year-olds could fully understand. Savannah listened to every one of them as though each conversation mattered. Declan stood across the street, unnoticed. For nearly 20 minutes, he simply watched. No cameras. No reporters. No social media posts. No fundraising event. No audience. Just Savannah giving away her Saturday. Eventually, he stepped inside. The room smelled like old books, crayons, and fresh coffee. The sound of children reading filled the air. Savannah looked up from a table where she was helping 2 students with homework. Surprise flashed across her face. "Declan, good morning. How did you find this place?" "Honestly, I was walking." She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "That answer sounds incomplete." "It is mostly true." Savannah laughed softly. Mostly true is usually how trouble starts. One of the children nearby looked at Declan. "Are you her boyfriend?" The entire room seemed to freeze. Savannah nearly dropped a pencil. Declan blinked. The child waited patiently for an answer. No, Savannah said quickly. We are friends. Oh, the boy nodded. You look nervous for friends. A few of the older volunteers tried unsuccessfully to hide their laughter. Savannah covered her face for a moment while Declan stared at the ceiling as though searching for professional guidance from above. The boy returned to his homework, completely satisfied with the chaos he had created. Later, after the children settled into reading groups, Savannah gave Declan a tour. The building was modest. A few classrooms, shelves filled with donated books, folding tables, worn chairs, nothing expensive, everything meaningful. You run all this? Declan asked. With help. How many hours? Savannah shrugged. 10 or 15 a week. On top of your job? Yes. He looked around again. Why? The question was sincere. Savannah thought for a moment before answering. Because when I was 12, a place like this helped me. Her voice softened. My mom worked 2 jobs. Money was tight. I spent afternoons in a community center reading books because it was free and safe. She smiled at the memory. One volunteer changed my life. She made me believe I could do more than survive. The room grew quiet around them. Children turned pages. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed across the city. So now you are doing the same thing, Declan said. Savannah nodded. Someone did. It for me. Now it is my turn. Declan looked at her differently in that moment. Not as a waitress. Not as the woman who challenged him. Not even as the person slowly becoming important to him. He saw something rarer. A person who gave without expecting recognition. A person who quietly improved lives simply because she could. And for perhaps the first time in many years, Declan Whitmore felt genuinely humbled by someone else's success. The problem with quiet happiness is that eventually someone notices. 2 weeks after Declan's visit to the reading center, a photograph appeared online. It was nothing dramatic. No scandal. No secret meeting. Just a simple image taken in the park near the river. Savannah sat on a bench laughing at something Declan had said. He was smiling back at her. The picture spread faster than either of them expected. By Monday morning, business blogs were discussing it. By Tuesday afternoon, financial reporters were asking questions. By Wednesday, the story had become impossible to ignore. The headlines were not cruel at first. Curious. Playful. The billionaire and the waitress. Manhattan's most unexpected friendship. But curiosity rarely stays harmless for long. Declan first noticed the shift during a board meeting on the 42nd floor of Whitmore Capital. The quarterly numbers were excellent. Revenue was up. Investors were satisfied. Yet nobody seemed interested in discussing business. We should address the situation, one board member finally said. Declan looked up from a report. What situation? The room grew quiet. The publicity. Another executive cleared his throat. There are concerns. Declan leaned back in his chair. Concerns about what? Nobody answered immediately, which told him everything. Say it, he said calmly. One of the older directors sighed. People are questioning her intentions. The words landed heavily. Declan's expression hardened. You have never met her. That is not the point. Actually, it is exactly the point. The meeting continued, but Declan heard very little after that. For years he had believed success insulated people from unfair judgment. Now he realized it often invited more of it. Across the city, Savannah was experiencing her own version of the same storm. Customers at Riverside Cafe began recognizing her. Some were kind, others less so. One afternoon, while delivering coffee to a table, she overheard 2 strangers talking. If I met a billionaire, I would not be working here anymore. Maybe that is the plan. They laughed. Savannah kept walking. Her smile never faded, but the words stayed with her. That evening she sat alone on the small balcony outside her apartment. The city glowed beneath the fading sunset. Her phone buzzed. Declan. She answered immediately. Hey. How are you? He asked. That depends. On what? How much honesty are you looking for? Silence. Then his voice softened. The real answer. Savannah stared at the skyline. I do not like being talked about by people who do not know me. Neither do I. The difference is that you are used to public attention. Declan did not argue. Because she was right. I am sorry, he said quietly. For what? For dragging you into this. Savannah closed her eyes. The sincerity in his voice made everything harder. You did not drag me anywhere. Then why do I feel responsible? She smiled sadly. Because you care. Neither spoke for several seconds. Traffic hummed below. A distant siren echoed through the city. Somewhere nearby, music drifted from an open apartment window. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary life. Declan, Savannah finally said. I think we should spend some time apart. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything either of them had said before. Why, he asked. Because this is becoming bigger than us. Savannah, your company is under pressure. I do not care. But I do. Her voice trembled slightly. I worked hard to build a simple life. I do not want every conversation to become a headline. Declan stood in front of his penthouse window, staring at the city below. For the first time in weeks, it felt cold again. So what happens now? Savannah looked up at the stars beginning to appear above the buildings. I think we need space. The words hurt more than she expected. For how long? I do not know. After the call ended, Savannah remained on the balcony long. After darkness arrived, across Manhattan, Declan stayed beside the window long after the lights in neighboring towers went out. Neither slept much that night, because sometimes the hardest distance between two people is not measured in miles. It is measured in everything left unsaid. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. Manhattan moved forward the way it always did. Trains arrived. Markets opened. Restaurants filled. People hurried through crowded sidewalks, chasing deadlines and ambitions. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Yet for both Savannah Hayes and Declan Whitmore, something felt missing. Savannah threw herself into work. Extra shifts at Riverside Cafe. More hours at the reading center. More reasons to stay busy. The children noticed she smiled less. Madison noticed she checked her phone more often. Even Savannah noticed it herself. She simply refused to admit why. Across the city, Declan buried himself in business. Meetings multiplied. Acquisitions continued. Investors celebrated another successful quarter. But success felt strangely quiet. Every achievement seemed to arrive carrying less satisfaction than before. One Thursday morning, his assistant entered his office holding a folder. The annual Whitmore Foundation Gala is tomorrow night, she said. The press list has doubled. Declan nodded absent-mindedly. The gala was one of the largest charitable events in New York. Business leaders, philanthropists, journalists, and public officials would attend. Normally, he would spend days preparing remarks. This year he barely cared. Then his assistant hesitated. There is one more thing. Declan looked up. What? She placed a tablet on his desk. An article filled the screen. Another opinion piece. Another stranger discussing Savannah. Another person questioning motives they knew nothing about. Declan read the first paragraph. Then the second. Finally, he set the tablet down. Slowly. Carefully. Enough, he said. His assistant blinked. Sir. For the first time in weeks, his decision came instantly. The next evening, crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand ballroom of the Crescent Hotel. Hundreds of guests filled the room. Conversations floated beneath soft music. Cameras flashed. Reporters waited near the stage. Savannah had no intention of attending. She was halfway through closing duties at the cafe when Madison appeared holding a phone. You need to see this. Savannah looked up. See what? The gala. Why? Madison turned the screen toward her. A live broadcast had already begun. On stage stood Declan Whitmore. He looked calm, composed, yet something in his expression felt different. More personal, less guarded. The audience applauded as he approached the podium. Savannah froze. Ladies and gentlemen, Declan began. Tonight was supposed to be about charitable giving. The room grew quiet. Instead, I would like to speak about gratitude. Reporters immediately started paying closer attention. Declan glanced across the audience, then toward the cameras. Over the past several months, many people have become interested in my personal life. A ripple moved through the crowd. Everyone knew exactly what he meant. Normally, I would ignore speculation. He paused. But there comes a point when silence becomes unfair. Savannah felt her heartbeat quicken. Inside the cafe, even the customers waiting for dessert stopped talking. Declan continued. There is a woman many of you have discussed without ever meeting. The ballroom fell completely silent. Some people assumed she wanted money. He shook his head. She never asked for any. Some assumed she wanted status. Another pause. She actively avoided it. Cameras flashed continuously now. Yet Declan never looked away. The truth is much simpler. His voice softened. The person who changed my life was not a politician, a celebrity, or a billionaire. Across the city, Savannah stared at the screen. It was a waitress. The ballroom remained motionless. She taught me that respect cannot be purchased, that kindness matters more than influence, that character matters more than reputation. Several people lowered their eyes. Others listened with visible surprise. Declan smiled faintly. She volunteers her weekends helping children learn to read. She gives more than most people with 10 times her resources. His voice grew steadier, stronger, and if anyone believes she deserves criticism for being an extraordinary human being, then they clearly have not met her. The silence that followed felt enormous. Then applause began. One person, then another, then hundreds. The entire ballroom rose to its feet. Savannah stood frozen inside Riverside Cafe as tears gathered in her eyes. Not because Declan defended her, because for the first time, he was no longer protecting his image. He was protecting someone else. And that changed everything. 6 months later, autumn painted the city in shades of gold and amber. The air felt cooler. The river moved slower beneath the afternoon sunlight. Life had settled into a rhythm neither Savannah Hayes nor Declan Whitmore could have predicted. The headlines eventually disappeared. New stories replaced old ones. Public attention moved on, but some changes remained. The Reading Center had received enough donations to renovate 2 classrooms. Riverside Cafe was busier than ever, and Declan had quietly become a regular volunteer on Saturday mornings, though he still struggled to assemble bookshelves without assistance. On one particular afternoon, Savannah stood beside a window at the Reading Center watching children leave with backpacks full of books. A familiar voice appeared behind her. "You still look at them like they are performing miracles." She turned and smiled. "Maybe they are." Declan walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. No security, no assistance, no luxury convoy waiting outside. Just Declan. He handed her a cup. "Thank you. You are welcome." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. The kind that no longer felt awkward. The kind built slowly through trust. "I have somewhere I would like to show you," Declan said. Savannah raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" "Probably not." "That answer is not reassuring." He laughed. "Come with me." An hour later they arrived at the Riverside Park where everything had begun to change. The same benches overlooked the water. The same skyline shimmered in the distance. The same breeze carried the scent of the river through the trees. Children played nearby. Couples walked along the path. The world continued as normal. Declan led her toward the bench where they had sat months earlier. The place where she had challenged him to live one ordinary day. The place where he had started listening instead of talking. Savannah looked around. "Why here?" Declan sat down. "Because this is where I realized something important." She joined him. "What?" He stared across the water for several seconds before answering. "For most of my life, I thought success meant building the biggest company, making the smartest deal, winning every negotiation." Savannah listened quietly. "Then I met someone who measured success differently." The afternoon sunlight reflected in the river. A sailboat drifted slowly across the horizon. Someone who cared more about helping children read than impressing strangers. He smiled. "Someone who hung up on me when I deserved it." Savannah laughed softly. "You definitely deserved it." "I know." Declan reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small object. Savannah immediately recognized it. His watch. The expensive Swiss watch he had worn the day they first met. The watch that had seemed like a symbol of everything separating their worlds. "I stopped wearing this months ago," he said. "Why?" "Because it reminded me of the person I used to be." He placed it gently beside them on the bench. "Not as a gift, not as a gesture of wealth, as a reminder. Savannah, I spent years trying to control every outcome." His voice softened. "Then you taught me something better." She looked at him. "What is that?" Declan smiled. The kind of smile that carried no performance, no strategy, no calculation, only truth. That the best things in life cannot be managed. They have to be earned. Savannah felt tears gathering in her eyes before she could stop them. Not because of the words, because she knew he meant them. Every one of them. "I am not here to impress you," Declan continued quietly. "And I am not here to convince you." The river breeze moved gently through the trees above them. "I am here because I love you." The words settled between them. Simple, honest, uncomplicated. Savannah looked at the man beside her. Not the billionaire, not the public figure, not the businessman. Just Declan. The man who had learned how to listen. The man who showed up. The man who changed. Slowly, she reached for his hand. Good, she whispered. Because I love you too. Declan closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the reality of it. Then he laughed quietly. A relieved laugh. A grateful one. Together, they sat watching the river as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. No cameras. No headlines. No audience. Just two people who had found something worth keeping. And as the city lights gradually awakened beyond the water, both understood a simple truth. The most valuable thing either of them had ever earned was not success. It was each other. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share this video, and let us know where you are watching from, and subscribe to When He Chose Her channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you powerful stories about dignity, kindness, unexpected connections, and life-changing love. Leave a comment below and tell us your favorite moment from the story. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next unforgettable story on When He Chose Her.